In this section, we're going to learn how to make probability statements using contingency tables for bivariate data. Let's assume that we have access to a huge database that has most of the information about the past students. Let's imagine that along with requesting the enrollment length, we also requested the information about whether a student transferred, graduated, or dropped. And we received the following contingency table for a random 100 students. We already know that the frequencies can be interpreted as probabilities, so we need to turn it into the relative frequency table. We add the total for columns and rows, and divide everything by the total to obtain the relative frequency contingency table. Now, in order to find the probability, we must have a well-defined event, which is defined for some experiment with its sample space. So the question that we need to answer next is, what is the experiment? What are the simple outcomes? And what is the sample space? And finally, what kind of events we can find the probabilities of when such contingency table is given. First, let's define the experiment. In this case, the experiment consists of randomly selecting one of the 100 students from the sample. For bivariate data, we are not going to define the simple outcomes, but we will highlight a number of special events. There are 4 special events, one for each row of the table. We'll label them Y1, Y2, Y3, and Y4. And there are also 3 special events, one for each column of the table. We'll label them R1, R2, and R3. We describe the event Y1 as an event in which the randomly selected student spent between 0 and 2 years in college. We describe the event R1 as an event in which the randomly selected student dropped out of college. Hopefully, it is clear now how the other special events are defined. The relative frequencies in the rightmost column and bottom row are called marginal probabilities, as they can be interpreted directly as the probabilities of the 7 special events. For example, the probability of Y3 is 0.2, and the probability of R2 is 0.35. Now let's draw the Venn diagram to help us understand how different events can be derived from the contingency table. All the cells inside the table are the simple outcomes and therefore form the sample space. The event Y3 can be visualized by covering the 3rd row, and the event Y2 can be visualized by covering the 2nd column. The cell where the events Y3 and R2 intersect represents the intersection of the 2 events. And the number written in the cell is the probability of the intersection of the 2 events. Similarly, the probability of Y4 and R1 is 0.08. All the relative frequencies inside the contingency table are called joint probabilities. So the probability of Y1 and R3 is 0.03, and the probability of Y3 and R1 is 0.10. The cells formed by combining the events Y3 and R2 represent the union of the 2 events. And to find its probability, we can add all the numbers in the region one by one, or we can use the general addition rule, the ingredients for which are the 2 marginal and 1 joint probabilities. Of course, we are more interested in applying the rules of the probability. So let's find the probability of Y2 or R1 using the general addition rule. The marginal probability of Y2 is 0.42. The marginal probability of R1 is 0.40. And the joint probability of Y2 and R1 is 0.14. So the probability of the union is 0.68. We discuss how to use the contingency tables to produce the probability statements about the events and compound events that are properly defined in the context of the given contingency table.